I hereby call this meeting to order at 12 o'clock p.m. And at this time, the committee welcomes any public comment. Oh, okay. Issues or items that are not on the agenda may be raised by the public at this time. Citizens should speak from the podium, begin by stating their name, and limit remarks to less than 3 minutes. Committee members may request that a discussed item be placed on a future agenda. The committee does take public comment on all regular agenda items during the discussion of those items. Are there any members of the public who wish to make a comment at this time? There being none, I'd like to entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as published.
I can, yeah.
Okay.
Yep, motion for that. Anyone second?
A second.
Okay. I hear a motion from Member Schulte and a second from Member Aker. Calling for the vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Consent agenda approved unanimously. Moving on to the regular agenda. First item is consider election of a chairperson and a vice chairperson to terms ending January 2023.
Just briefly, I know that y'all are familiar with the chairperson and vice chairperson roles, but I did just want to speak to, we are required to elect those officers each January. It has been postponed just because of our lack of quorum on the last couple meetings, and it is for a one-year term. So the election to date would service until January 2023, and here are your members to be able to consider for these officer roles. Whenever y'all are ready to take action.
So
Any volunteers?
do I say that right? Okay, so I do welcome a motion for nominating a chairperson and a vice chairperson. Okay.
A motion.
Okay.
Okay.
For Caitlin to be chair and Bambi to be vice chair.
Oh, okay.
I will quickly second that.
Thank you. Okay. So I hear a motion from Member Murphy and a second from Member Carpenter. Calling for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 Okay. Any opposed? Okay. The nominations have been approved unanimously. The next item is discussion and possible action related to monthly shelter numbers for February of 2022.
I do have a presentation to go through with y'all for our activity from February. I'm sure that y'all have seen the news this week that we are at critical population, and I think that going through these figures for the last few months will help explain how that has come to be. So February, our intake was 293 new animals arriving on the premises. That does seem quite low compared to your average monthly, but seasonally, February is usually a slow month for us. And so this is actually up 30+% compared to February 2021, and the vast majority of it was puppies. We saw parvo coming into the shelter unseasonally at this time of year, and just a tremendous increase in the number of dogs under 6 months of age arriving at that time. We did have 133 adoptions and 27 animals transferred out. We had a big transport scheduled that was postponed till March that you'll see in the next figure. 111 animals redeemed by their owner, 16 wildlife released. That's a little low, but it was quite cold in February, so there wasn't as much wildlife on the move. 12 animals deceased, 401 left in the shelter, and 96% live released. Even with that large intake, we had a quite healthy month. I do predict that'll be our highest performance for the fiscal year. Of the animals that died, 6 were cats and 6 were dogs. The vast majority of those were sick, injured, or failure to thrive. Three dogs were euthanized for showing aggression. For February, we had outcomes with 28% of animals leaving via adoption, 29% returned to their owner, 8% wildlife released, 25% transferred out to rescue partners, and 12% of our animals were deceased.
Okay, are there any questions?
So, what's the, I guess for as far as, I know we've covered this at some point, what's the goal for like, if we're all things considered equal? I remember there was a couple groups have come through and kind of given some goals for like communities to strive for, like as far as like adoptions, things of that nature. Is our adoption rate compared to that kind of low? And I know from looking ahead at the rest of this, I know that there's just been kind of a decrease over the fiscal year, but what's the percentage that we're trying to go for as far as adoptions? What would be our target goal?
So there are a few things that feed into that. So one, just any local goal setting that city leadership and Paws leadership does. Our goal would be for this year to be the year that adoptions exceed 30%. As far as best practices from American Pets Alive, they recommend that you should shoot for 15% of your animals to be returned to owner. We're well over that and continue to do more than that. They recommend, as far as best practices, that 10% of your animals be transferred out. We're well over that. So that does let us be 90% last year and hopefully again this year. The reason that they recommend that your transfers out comprise only 10% of your live outcomes is because that when they are a larger portion like ours traditionally are, we really rely on those transports, we really rely on those receiving agencies, and it makes us really vulnerable when there's a natural disaster or when there's staff turnover at an agency and they're no longer pulling from us. So I foresee that our transfers out will generally year after year exceed that 10% recommended practice, just because of the work that Jen Murphy and her staff do to just jump through whatever hoops necessary to please those rescue partners, those receiving agencies. So we do aim to increase adoptions each year and to increase return to owner as far as our goals for fiscal year 22.
Okay. I mean, I was just kind of, because I remembered at one previous meeting, we covered those APAs, to, best managed practice deals. I just had not remembered exact metrics. So thank you for telling me again.
Yeah, and what we love about American Pets Alive is that they're very much, even the recommended practices are very much customizable to your specific community. And so if we really rely on our animal services officers to do a lot of return to owner, to follow up with citizens if we have a last known address, anything like that. And whereas other groups maybe don't have that luxury or that asset or that resource. And so they're like, however you get to 90% is excellent and commendable. And we are exceeding on those two metrics, return to owner and transfers out. And it's a bonus that we handle wildlife. There's actually no recommended practice for how much wildlife you release. So any wildlife release just helps improve that live release rate. It's quite common that an organization such as ours does not handle wildlife at all. So any of the releasing of possums, raccoons, any of that just helps our live release rate.
And, to me, these seem excellent, but I just forgot what we were, as far as some other outside sources for that. So thank you again.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Yes. New to the party, just trying to figure things out. But I did see these before the meeting. My first question is what's the overage for if you add those up? I get 102%. So what's the 2%?
Great, I appreciate you bringing that up. I am a former finance person, so I'm quite embarrassed by that. I will get you the actual figures. There must have been a rounding.
Yeah, that's what
error.
I'm figuring.
Yeah.
But I was just, maybe if it was a carryover from another month or something like that. So I was just curious.
Thank you.
Also on the transfers, is that transferring outside of our city, or is that transferring also to like Paws or the other?
That is transfers outside of Tonga
Okay.
County.
Well, it can be local as well. So if an animal is in, for example, Paws Foster, we still carry that animal in our inventory as an animal that's available for adoption and care under the umbrella, under the coalition of both of us. And so if an animal is pulled locally for rescue or sent on a large-scale transport via ground transport or air transport, that could be any kind of rescue transfer like that.
So it's just not within the animal control shelter, it's including the numbers with Paws that are next door?
Yes, so since Paws is our adoption agent, any of adoptions that they do, they handle all of our adoptions. So all 28% of the adoptions that we had were entirely handled by Paws. And so when we report on our monthly performance or any programming we're doing, it's very much hand in hand with, Paws does this portion of it, the city does this portion of it. So we're reporting on our performance together as a partnership.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay. Then moving on to item C, discussion and possible action related to monthly shelter numbers for March 2022.
What we have for March, so March is usually the onset of our kitten season, and you see that intake increased greatly from February to March. We had 378 new arrivals. That's actually quite in line with March 2021. It's quite common that that is our first month that signals, hey, your winter break is over, intake is up again. I will point out that we did not have a winter break. Our intake remained high from that October to end of February timeframe, and we're getting feedback from our colleagues that that's happening nationwide. Nobody had a winter break. Nobody had that downtime to focus on cross-training and developing new programs and special projects, and everyone is experiencing that. What's different about March 2022 is that although intake was up only 5% really compared to the prior year, March 2021 really comprised a lot of kitten intake. It was the beginning of kitten season, lots of newborns, lots of moms with litters, lots of pregnant moms. And for us, March 22 was a lot of puppies, a lot of canines under 6 months of age. And so that put our shelter into a little bit of flux. When I meet with our building maintenance folks, our architects that talk about future expansion, they ask me what we need, and I say we need flexibility. Because for March 2022, we actually converted our kitten nursery to be a puppy nursery, yet another puppy room on top of our existing 3 puppy rooms. And so we were able to have a lot of transport and pretty quickly convert that back to a kitten nursery in time for kitten season. But that intake for March, although not up a lot as far as total numbers, it's up a lot in canines, which is really tough for us. 102 adoptions, 87 animals were transferred out to rescue, 105 redeemed by owner, a little increase in wildlife released, and a little increase in the number of pets that passed away. And so you'll see an increase in our shelter population to 442 at month end, but we still had a strong month for live releases with 94.6% of animals released alive.
Are there any questions? Oh,
I think that hit all of it. I appreciate it.
does anyone have any questions? Okay. Moving on to D, discussion and possible action related to monthly shelter numbers for April 2022.
So this brings us to present day. This is, of course, the month that we just finished. Our intake was at 368 new arrivals. That is up 10% compared to April 2021. So you're seeing just month after month, we are measurably up on intake. And we did, April was kind of the month that we said, gosh, there's just so many puppies. And so we actually ran some figures to know it feels like a lot of puppies, but can we, really know the metrics here and know the data here? And so although our intake was only up 10%, year-to-date canine intake is up about 25%. And so that's hundreds more dogs than we had the year before. And so we are seeing quite a bit there. We had 84 adoptions, 118 animals transferred out. And this may have been our first month with a dedicated airplane travel. We have had an opportunity in the past to send a few dogs on air travel, or even cats on air travel, but it's usually in conjunction with another bigger group. For April 2022, there was a dedicated flight that came to San Angelo specifically to serve San Angelo pets, and we filled that plane and got those pets to a really great opportunity. 95 animals were redeemed by their owner, 29 wildlife released. You will see an increase in the number of animals deceased, with 30 animals either euthanized or died in custody. And then we had 452 animals left in the shelter, with a 91% live release rate. So it was based on those figures, with the large number of canines we were carrying in the shelter, that we did rely on our colleagues at American Pets Alive, who provided some guidance on how to share with the community that you need help, right? That we always need help and we're always asking for fosters, but how do we really communicate that, we're in a space crisis? And they know that nations, like I mentioned, across the nation are really dealing with this, that we're not going into our busy season set up for success because we're already so full. And so that led to the working closely with our communications department at the city to share our capacity this week, share different adoption specials that are going on, provide a lot of feedback to concerned citizens about how they can get involved, what's the best thing to do if they find a pet, what are some things they can do to help support us through this time. Really low for deaths. We had a possum that came in quite badly injured from some sort of animal attack, likely a canine attack. And so we were able to save her babies, but not her. And then we had 12 dogs euthanized for aggression and severe medical. 8 of them were euthanized for aggression, and then the other animals were either sick, injured, or failure to thrive.
And I'm going to assume that, because I go out to the shelter quite often, I'm going to assume that the majority of those 22 were going to be related to the kittens that came in that ended up with getting those severe respiratory infections, the less than 12-week-old kittens that I saw out there.
We had 3 cats that died in April, so that's quite low for the season.
Okay.
Our kitten season is proving to be quite mild. That is a combination of things. One, better training at our intake desk that, hey, if a kitten looks fluffy and well cared for, if it's under a certain age, we want to put that back and let it stay with mom. She's clearly taking good care of it. So also we are have invested heavily, both the city and Concho Valley Paws has invested heavily in the spay-neuter of community cats. And so we are seeing a decrease in the number of cats coming in, which is a good cross-section to report that just cat population community-wide is down, as we've had so many animals returned to field spay-neutered. So the number of cats that died in April 22 was probably a historic low for that season.
Okay. And then do you think maybe as far as, because I know I've seen a lot of people try to bring in those small fluffy kittens that you're saying, like, oh, we found them underneath our bush this morning in front of our front yard. Do you think maybe a PR statement about leaving fluffy kittens and how long to leave them out there, as far as like a city post, might be useful in reducing that?
Yeah, in early April, we did some social media outreach and shared the group of posts about "Don't kidnap me," that, if I'm fluffy and in a safe place, leave me be. Mom can take up to 6 hours while she's out hunting. And, certainly if a newborn kitten comes in and either the citizen knows, like, hey, I know who the mom is and she hasn't come back for them, or I saw that she had passed away, or they're sick, or they're injured, like, we exist to serve those just most vulnerable pets. But if they're in good shape and they're healthy, fluffy, clean, fat belly, puppies, we're going to encourage citizens just to put those back and not be a shelter intake at that time. So we did do some of that, but if you didn't see it, it certainly could use a reshare, some more information going out about it.
And I don't always see everything get put on social media, so I might have missed it. So, but maybe not a bad idea to just reshare it again, just to see if that can help. It's pretty inexpensive and saves a lot of manpower. So, okay.
And one thing I'm going to do a better job of communicating to y'all is, we say 452 animals left in shelter, but I mean 452 animals left under our partnership umbrella. And so moving forward, we're going to do a better job of communicating that at end of April, what that meant was 356 animals on site in the shelter, 86 under the Paws umbrella at their facility, and then 5 animals off-site, either in home quarantine, rabies quarantine at a vet clinic, or severe medical. They're still on their stray hold. They came in, they're our pet, but Paws is covering their emergency medical coverage while they're at a vet clinic. And so when we say 452 animals, that's 356 on-site at my facility, and then another almost 100 at different locations, still under our authority, still under our partnership, but just not physically in the shelter.
I do have a question about the, 30 deceased, how it was broken up. Were
Do you
there?
mean that it also doesn't add up to 30?
Yes.
Thank y'all. We've been a little short-staffed, and so I apologize that this wasn't more thorough, but I will get you those corrected figures.
Thank you. Does anyone have any other questions? Okay. Moving on to E, consider adopting the online ambassador program for lost and found pets.
So as we mentioned, we are ACEs, head and shoulders above other groups as far as the number of pets that we get back to their owner. But we know that there's more that can be done. I've got a boy in my office right now. I call him a lumpy mashed potato. He is a giant Great Pyrenees Malamute mix, and he is clearly, someone has worked with him and done a lot of time with him. And we have scanned for a microchip. We have looked for a tag. We have posted him on the city's Claim Your Canine daily post. And we are at a loss of where his people is, who have clearly invested a lot in him. And so even though we have, almost 30%, over 25% of our animals leaving by being returned to their owner, we know that even more can be done. And that's why this program is before you today for consideration. So the Online Ambassador Program is an entirely, largely volunteer-run program where someone who has free time in the evenings or is very active on social media can browse these local lost and found sites and Facebook groups and communicate with folks to, one, take advantage of some city services, right? If you're posting that you've lost your pet, there's one that all of us are really keeping an eye out for. It's a lady that shared her red, I don't bully. It's a very mixed breed dog, but she is very much missing that pet, and we are all keeping an eye out for him. So we want to make sure that someone like that, who is just reposting their pet, making sure it stays in, everyone's mind, that she's aware of, for example, our Petco Love Lost program. So it's a facial recognition technology that if you on your own take, 15 minutes to register all your pets, it might take someone less time that didn't have as many pets as I do. But if you register your pet's picture with Petco Love Lost, it works in the background of our pet management software seamlessly. And so if a pet comes in that matches your pet's picture that you've uploaded, you'll get an alert saying, hey, your pet might be at the shelter. And I'll get an alert saying, hey, this pet might belong to Caitlin Wiley. And it's a really neat technology that's been developed, and in particular in like gray tabby cats, orange tabby cats, that some of us might be like, gosh, these cats look the same. It's still matching same for same. Like, well, this one has white whiskers, and this one has black, and this one has a little thing right here. And so it's really pinpointing and providing a lot of good feedback to those owners, like, hey, this might be your pet, please follow up with the shelter and see. So first we want our online online ambassadors and our volunteers to just be commenting that on everybody that's posting, hey, I've lost my pet. Be sure and register with Petco Love Lost, because that's something you can do anytime. You know, we talk about microchip, we love microchips, so much good happens and comes from microchips. But if you've already lost your pet and it doesn't have a microchip, what do? You register it with Petco Love Lost.
I do have a question on the Petco Love Lost program. Just as like because I mean, I know that every pet that gets adopted out or returned to owner, you know, not everyone's going to sit down and spend 15 minutes or even 5 minutes doing that. Is that a possibility to preemptively enter in pets that come into the shelter and get either returned to owner or adopted out, to preemptively enter them into that so that we can return them?
It'll automatically be registered, because once a pet is outcomed, in my system, I have this animal attached to this person, and since Petco Love Lost runs in the background of it, it already has that information. So once I register and outcome an animal as adopted or returned to owner in our pet management software, it's already registered for us. We know who that owner is.
I was not aware of that, but that seems to answer that question right there, so thank you.
So we want folks who have lost their pets to take advantage of that. We want people to be proactive, that once they have been reunited with their pet, bring it by for a $13 microchip. And this person is also browsing our live inventory of pets at petango.com. So they have dinner with their family, they are browsing the local lost and found sites, and they're like, hey, there's a dog on petango.com. It's a red hound typed dog. Could be your dog. You'll message that person and say, hey, be sure and check out animal number 5002 and give animal services a call in the morning. Then there will be like an end of shift type report that volunteer would send at the end of their evening to a staff liaison. We have an animal services officer who would like to take on this role. And so each morning she would be checking her email and know, hey, this volunteer spoke to these people. They could be their pet. We can let the front desk know. We can follow up with that citizen and say, hey, I know that our volunteer reached out last night, but we haven't heard from you yet. Just want to see if this could be your pet. And so that way the volunteer is doing the yeoman's work of interacting and doing that online, so that our staff can potentially have a break in the evenings to not do that work, but is still getting that information to be able to share and follow up with those potential owners.
Can I make maybe a suggestion that might help with pets that don't enter into the city environment? Maybe we could reach out and give a flyer to the local vet clinics about that program for Petco Love Lost, because I wasn't even aware of it until seeing it on the notes, and I wasn't very familiar with it. So I know a lot of clients would probably be willing to do that if
Sure.
they knew about it.
And it used to
beforehand.
be findingrover.com. It was recently acquired by Petco Foundation. So you may know it under its old name, but sure, I'm sure there's some literature that they can provide that can be provided in that way.
Yeah, and just be somewhere, be just another way of, informing pet owners at a location they're probably going to be going, at least majority of them, at least once a year. So maybe at least catch some more that way, so.
So hopefully, I mean, this is a program that, of course, we patterned largely after American Pets Alive. It's something that's working in other communities. We think it just creates rapport with citizens. So many of the interactions that citizens have with animal services is potentially a complaint or a compliance issue or a citation potentially. And so we want folks to, one, be responsible and come forward and take their pets, but two, have a good interaction that, hey, it wasn't my pet, but I appreciated that somebody was keeping an eye out for it. Whatever it may be. We do still struggle with, you can tell almost like by zip code or by section of town, like if a really good-looking pet who's clearly owned comes in from certain neighborhoods, we'll clock it and be like, gosh, those people aren't coming. And so we're still not reaching marginalized people. We're still not reaching people that don't have reliable transportation, because getting to the shelter is kind of a bear. Like, we're 6 miles from everywhere. So we are still doing more and more to reach those folks. And a lot of the communication that went out this week and will go out again next week about us being at capacity is about, something like 40% of dogs go missing within 400 feet of their front door. Like, they're right there. They were picked up right in front of their front yard. And something like 70% of pets go missing within a mile of their home. And so we really want to encourage folks that if you see a dog running loose, secure it, make sure it's safe, but also, like, knock doors, get on your Nextdoor app, get to know your neighbors. Oh, so-and-so's boyfriend's been staying with her. It must be his dog because we know all the other neighborhood dogs, or whatever it is. That for certain zip codes, for certain neighborhoods, when that pet leaves that area, their folks are not going to walk into a government facility and pay a government fee to get their animal back. There's just that distrust there. And so we believe that those people still love their pets and still provide appropriately for their pets, and their home is a better situation for that pet than the shelter. And so we are still trying to reach those folks and make sure that they can maintain pet ownership. But this is one other tool, just to be able to dialogue with folks in the evenings, on the weekends, when they are on social media, and we sometimes are not. So that is the program that's before y'all today for consideration.
So if considered, I guess we would have more information on how someone could sign up to volunteer.
Yes, so there is some sample language that we developed that is in your background, but not on this PowerPoint. It's like sample verbiage of, for every person that shares that they have lost a pet, post, hey, be sure to register with Petco Love Lost. If you have a microchip, call your microchip company. And so there's sample, like, paragraphs, just that we want the communication and the messaging to be consistent. That's a complaint that I got a lot when I was new, is staff weren't cross-trained the same way, so a citizen could call and be told one thing, and the next day call about the same issue and be told something else. And so we want to control that amongst our volunteers, that there's hopefully a rotation of folks who, I'll do every Tuesday, Thursday, well, I'll do every Saturday, Sunday, but we still want the communication to be consistent. And so there's sample language, so this doesn't require someone to be like an expert in all of our policies and program. It just requires someone who's willing to say, hey, I'm sure y'all are sick of me saying it, but be sure and register your pet's picture with Petco Love Lost.
Just a curiosity question, is there a automated program that from like a Nextdoor or Facebook or Instagram? I know that there's the bots out there, but is there like an automated deal that can do a keyword search and all those that pop up can be responded to by that person? I'm not familiar with that. I just know that some of the technology has changed because there's targeted ads, targeted responses, things like that on a lot of your social media apps. So is that I don't know if that's a possibility, but if it's not an expensive service, maybe something to look into as well, in addition to the volunteer.
Maybe. What we're proposing in this program is simply, is a lot more neighborly and a lot more grassroots. So just one person logged in as themselves, commenting and tools and opportunities available to them. Like, hey, I noticed your dog went missing about 3 weeks ago, but a dog just came into the shelter yesterday. Really, you maybe have stopped looking. Let me help match you with that. And so we have a short list of local lost and found Facebook groups and sites and the Nextdoor app, and that's where we'll start. Just as we just wanted it to be as neighborly and community-driven as possible, that we just want folks to feel like they're talking to a real person who is just passionate about keeping families together and knows a little bit more about how to, maneuver city shelter intake when we have so many stinking animals on the website. It's tough sometimes to browse through all those pages.
Any other questions? Okay. Moving on to F, consider the Dogs Playing for Life program.
We had an opportunity, Concho Valley Paws qualified for a grant for folks from Dogs Playing for Life to come. It's something that's been on our radar for a minute and just something that we knew that our pets needed. We knew that we will keep dogs for as long as it takes to find their forever home. And so we have dogs that have been in the shelter for months and months. Some of them are hitting annual anniversaries. And so we know that to serve them appropriately, they need time out of their kennel. A dog walking program, one walker with one dog is quite labor intensive. And so we had heard about Dogs Playing for Life. We knew a little bit about Dogs Playing for Life, and we did have the opportunity for them to come and do a 5-day training. It was a grant that Concho Valley Paws was awarded, and city staff was allowed to participate in, and we ran our pets through that. And so we don't know how we're going to launch playgroup locally. It is going to require some resources and infrastructure that we are, phasing in a little bit here and there. But I did want this group to be aware of it and talk about the pros and cons, the benefits, the risk reward that we learned about, that we feel, really strongly that it is a good choice. So it is about quality of life over quantity of life. It will combat that criticism we get about just warehousing dogs and keeping dogs with no end in sight of when they are going to get their forever home. But hopefully, if their stay with us can be decreased in stress level, then at least that time they spend with us is not just a high stress environment. Their message is every dog, every day. We, of course, would start quite small with, what we feel comfortable with and what we know would do really well. Just honoring pets for the individuals that they are, that some are going to love play groups, some are going to be really into it, some are going to be more docile. And with that, we may even jump into the different categories. One thing that we like about Dogs Playing for Life, I mentioned earlier, what we like about American Pets for Life is that it's extremely flexible. So is Dogs Playing for Life. What we were blown away. This was a 5-day conference, but it was stuff that we thought about for weeks afterwards, that socially healthy dogs can be better teachers than humans. So when we identify the dog is really reactive in this kind of situation, or this dog's just kind of rude and has never learned any manners, or this dog, he doesn't mean anything by it, and so we saw again and again that there were dogs that would provide that correction to their playmates that were getting a little out of hand, and they took it a lot better than, a number of basic obedience trainings that Caitlin and I have been through, you just saw happen in seconds in a playgroup environment. What we also like about playgroup is it's a mental and physical outlet. Dogs are pack animals. They thrive in this kind of environment, and so so dogs that need a lot of physical outlet will get that, but dogs that focus more on just needing a mental outlet will get that as well. It helps provide a more accurate assessment of behavior, and they said again and again, playgroup equals placement, and we're seeing that dogs that had certain labels or dogs that acted a certain way in their kennel, when you get them out to playgroup, you're like, guys, this guy's a couch potato. Like, he doesn't need as much exercise as previously thought, or he's not as active as he is out in playgroup. And so that way potential adopters and fosters can see them really thriving and outside of their kennel in a really healthy way. And I mentioned earlier that a dog walking program is very labor intensive. It requires a ton of volunteers to be able to walk the kind of dogs that we can run through a play group. And so some metrics that they provide, and of course this would be optimal after we all get really good at running play group and running the dogs back and forth, is they say you can run 80 dogs through a play group in 2.5 hours. And that 30 minutes in play group is equivalent to a 2-hour walk. So when you take your dog for a long hike on a Saturday morning and they come back and they're exhausted and they sleep the rest of the day, our dogs will do that in a much shorter time frame because I certainly don't have the resources for them to go on a 2-hour walk. But I do, hopefully soon, we'll have the resources to put them in 30 minutes of play group. So there are a couple. So there are organizational benefits, of course. One, we can clean faster with the dogs outside. Like if we say, hey, we're cleaning row 1 now, do we want to run play group for those candidates in row 1 so we can clean more efficiently, more effectively, and then those dogs come back to a clean kennel. Most of them have done their business outside, so their kennel stays cleaner longer, and that just is one other way that they improve their quality of life there at the shelter. As I mentioned, it makes better adoption and foster matches because people can see dogs in a more natural environment. And this was really important to us, is they said that once you really launch playgroup and you're doing it consistently, you'll see we've seen in our communities that we provide support that there's an average increase of 6.8% to the live release rate. And last year, our live release rate was 90.4%, and we officially achieved a no-kill status. But we know that there are more animals that we could be saving, and it's not promised year after year that we're going to stay no-kill. And so if Dogs Playing for Life boasts a 6.8% live release rate, we are, desperately in need of that. They also say the average length of stay decreases by 4 days after 3 months of playgroup, but 13 days long-term. So your dogs are with you an average of 2 weeks less if you're consistently running playgroup for a year or more. They said, we're going to let you decide who you're comfortable with sending to playgroup. We don't want to, advise on the medical at all. We respect whatever you think on medical, because we do, any puppies come in for a 14-day parvo watch. Certainly any new dogs like that wouldn't be going to playgroup. Any dogs still on their stray hold would be waiting to go to playgroup. But they say even dogs with known behavioral issues, so dogs that we have like a bite history on, or have they've come back from several adoptions because of poorly reported behavior, they're like, send them to playgroup. So it's whoever's running playgroup, it's what they're comfortable with. And so we saw dogs that we knew had bite histories, dogs that have come out of bite quarantine that we had photographic evidence that they had bite histories. And the experts at Dogs Playing for Life were like, send them to playgroup. Bring them by, I'm going to look at them. And we had dogs that we absolutely thought were only dog homes that went to playgroup and just did amazing there. And they were kind to their friends and enjoyed it, and it was very, very manageable. So they said, what's the role of your playgroup? And so, of course, we want playgroup for quality of life. We love the animals that are in our care, and we want them to have a better situation while they're in the shelter, while they're waiting for that forever home. But Dogs Playing for Life pretty quickly identified, they're like, you're staffed really lean. And so anything that's for quality of life is gonna be the first thing that you drop when you're really short on staff. So they said, we recommend that you host some kind of play group to facilitate cleaning. And it's not big on behavior modification. You're not spending a lot of time saying, hey, this dog right here, I've been really working with him on like not humping his neighbor. And so we're not going to spend a lot of time on those things. We're going to run them through really quickly as we're cleaning their kennels and radioing and saying, kennel 1 is clean, he can come back, kennel 5 is coming out. And they said that's where we really see the benefit is your staff will have an easier, more efficient, more thorough cleaning daily if you're running playgroup to support that. And we, admittedly, are a long way from doing that. We don't have the staff or volunteers to run that. We don't have the appropriate size play yards, but we're working on all of that. So it's a goal for one day. For the person in the pen running playgroup, there's a lot of things. I mean, I know that you and I have seen, we've assessed dogs, we've looked at them, and we've been like, oh, they're doing that. They're failing the temperament test. We're separating these dogs now. And what we learned again and again is, some dogs are just not well socialized, right? Like they were removed from their litter too young, or removed from their mom, or just have had a hard life, and they came into playgroup, immediately had their hackles up, But I remember one dog in particular, like he had it, and I was like, guys, watch this dog. He's got his hackles up. And they're like, he's fine. He's just never seen this many dogs before, like in a yard. And within 5 minutes, he was like, oh, friends? Oh, okay. Oh, I can do this. Lots of mounting, lots of just interaction like that. But still, safe and appropriate, and dogs just play like that. And so they were like, just because a dog has its tail up and is very erect doesn't mean that dog's about to react or about to escalate into a bigger problem. And so it's something that they spent a lot of time with us on watching. It's something that we'll just, those that are going to be in playgroup running it will just learn what they're comfortable with as time goes on. This group is dedicated to supporting us throughout launching playgroup. They want to come back. They want to spend more time with us. They want for us to report back with them. And I probably should have provided this earlier. I tried to get into it earlier, but they'll categorize dogs in 4 ways. And Concho Valley Paws is running assessment play groups several times a week to just assess those new arrivals. And so you may have a giant, like bully, blocky-headed dog that comes in and he's a gentle dainty, right? He's like, it's muddy out here. Oh, this one's playing near me. Oh, you're too much. And they would do better in like a quiet, right? They would do better in like a quieter play group and just clocking it, like me seeing a dog. I'm like, oh, this dog needs a really athletic home where he has lots of outside time. And he doesn't. He needs like a sofa and a belly rub. And so you'll identify, which dogs are gentle and dainty, which dogs are rough and rowdy. Now, rough and rowdy means you just have a lot of really well socialized young dogs, usually young dogs, that are like getting after, and they're like, I'm going to run over here, I'm going to tussle with you over here, and they have the best time. And it's like a frat party. No offense to anybody that's representing that, but just it is like, game on. Push and pull, we haven't seen much of that just because our play yards are quite small, but push and pull would be like if you have like a working breed dog and they just want the zoomies, they want to go, they want to run the length of the yard back and forth again and again. That is the third style of play group. And then the last one, seek and destroy, is a combo of 2 and 3. Seek and destroy sounds scary to me, but it's not. It's just the dogs that are like, I'm going to run the length, but I'm also going to like tussle with my friend, and then I'm going to do it again. And they're like, give me all the physical outlets right now. If it could be a WrestleMania, I'm into it. And it's still safe and appropriate and correct play. You want to make sure, and you're just watching the dogs. Like, hey, this one's kind of shutting down in the corner. I think he's more gentle, dainty. Let's get him into a quieter yard. It's a lot of that. And so identifying their play styles. Concho Valley Paws is currently like color coding collars, so we know, like, hey, this group, they're gentle, dainty. This group, they're rough and rowdy. And so that way every dog is having a good experience in play group, dependent on the individual, that they like out of that. One thing that was really amazing to see is those dogs that are greeter dogs. They're happy, they're a social butterfly, they're really well socialized, they love everyone. Is there a new dog coming in the yard? Please, let me see her, she's so much fun. My favorite is the helper dogs. So I saw a lot of like our retired mama dogs that were like this, that they're used to correcting their like litter when they're like, hey, get off your brother, you're not acting right. And so if a dog comes up and is smelling you and is doing too much and is too like into it, the helper dog will turn around and be like, hey, back off, bro, you're being a little too much. And so that's what I was mentioning earlier, that dogs can be such better teachers than humans can about appropriate dog behavior. And so we would watch this dog, and she was getting sniffed all around by this one boy, and he wouldn't leave her alone, and she would turn around and be like, hey, back off. And it's something that without this training I would have said, oh, she's about to snap at that dog, it's about to be a bite. And what you're looking for is him to be like, oh, okay, I didn't know. And he walks off, and that's a perfect reaction, is that this dog was smart enough to say, you're bugging me and you're not acting right. And this dog was smart enough to say, oh, my bad, thanks for letting me know, friend. And so the helper dogs are great. And those helper dogs get to go to play group more often because they're teaching all the dogs some better behavior. So I think I've said all of this. So this is what we spent. We did a classroom portion, and this is what I wanted to hurry up and fast forward to, is what tools do you have when you're in play group and something is going wrong or something needs some intervention. So they recommend least invasive, minimally aversive. And so what's quite common is, so there's water spray bottles, and so you're spraying the dog and you're like, hey, stop humping your friend. She doesn't like that. Or you have a shake can, anything like that to get the dog's attention and warn them like, hey, I'm warning you, you need to act better. A pet corrector is that citronella spray thing, and then an air horn. So you'll have a number of things like on your body, like in a fanny pack while you're running playgroup, to be able to say, hey, I need help. And so there's ideally 2 people in running playgroup. There's several volunteers, running dogs back and forth in and out of playgroup, but there's also just staff on the premises available. And so if you hear an air horn, everybody comes running and we all help and we de-escalate a situation. So we are getting used to using those aversive tools appropriately, knowing when to intervene and when to kind of let the dogs work it out themselves. Of course, our biggest fear with playgroup was dogs getting hurt, dogs getting injured, dogs biting each other, dogs attacking each other. And so I do want y'all to be aware that it's a lot of training and it's a lot of the person in the playgroup feeling really confident in what they're doing. 2, it's having these tools available to you to intervene when appropriate and to ask for help when appropriate. And so they talked about how best to, if there is a bite event, what do you do? And mostly you stop, you hold it, and you feed the bite, and you push the aggressor animal's mouth down until it opens. I don't know if I'm describing that well, but I learned it in my foster care licensing. Quite frankly, it's the same theory. Is you just want that animal to release their bite, and then they let go. Then the puncture wound is quite minimal, if any. Hopefully it was caught before then, but even in the event of a bite, you want to send the dog that started it out for like a little walk before they go back to their kennel, and you want to leave the dog that suffered it in the kennel, in the play group, so that he doesn't leave play group terrified, like, gosh, last time I was there, I got bit, I didn't like it. We want them to have a little bit more time in play group to recover and to feel really confident that, well, that thing happened, but then I met a new friend and it was fine. And so that was, of course, our primary concern with starting playgroup is how on earth will we do this with our population of dogs that we know have reported history and reported behavior. And what we saw again and again is our dogs know how to dog, and that's just what playgroup is about. Is this program, the specific Dogs Playing for Life program, means that the dogs get to act like dogs for a minute, because being in a kennel by themselves in a cinder block 4x4 space is not the natural environment for dogs. So this is something that is really important to us. We think it's the next answer in life-saving programming, and we think that it's going to be really valuable for more live outcomes, but also to serve our pets while they're in residence to have a good time.
Are there any questions? That concludes all of the regular agenda items. Do we have any follow-up or administrative issues to announce? There being none, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
A second.
I hear a motion from Member Schultze and a second from Member Aker. Calling for the vote, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Meeting adjourned at
12:52.
12:52 p.m.